I never thought my own flesh and blood would leave me homeless for a few extra zeros in their bank accounts, but looking back at the wreckage of my family, I realize I was the only one who actually loved my grandfather for the man he was rather than the land he owned. My parents and my two older brothers sold my inheritance right out from under me while I was away at a mandatory 3-month work certification program, thinking they'd found a loophole that would let them pocket millions from a developer who wanted to turn Grandpa's coastal estate into a luxury resort. They told me to my face that I was being selfish for wanting to keep a 5-bedroom house all to myself when the family could all benefit from the sale, but the truth is, Grandpa left it specifically to me because I was the only one who visited him during his final 3 years of hospice care. Was I wrong for refusing to forgive them even after they begged for mercy? Or would you have burned every bridge just like I did to ensure they got exactly what they deserved? I really need you to hear this story from the beginning because the level of betrayal is something I'm still processing. And I want you to tell me if I'm the villain here for what I eventually unleashed on them. Grandpa Silas was a man of few words and even fewer patience for slackers, which is exactly how he viewed my father and my brothers, Mark and Leo. My dad had spent his entire life waiting for Grandpa to pass away so he could finally stop pretending to work at the family hardware business and live off the old money he assumed was piled up in the attic. Mark and Leo weren't much better. They were in their 30s, still asking for loans that were never repaid and only showing up to Grandpa's house on Thanksgiving to the antiques. I, on the other hand, was the black sheep. Because I worked a blue-collar job in forestry and spent my weekends fixing Grandpa's roof or sitting on the porch listening to his stories about the war. When Grandpa's health started to decline, the rest of the family suddenly became very busy. My dad claimed his back was too bad to help with the lifting, and my brothers were always on the verge of a big deal that required them to be out of town. I was the one who moved into the guest room, changed his bandages, and held his hand when he finally took his last breath. A week after the funeral, the lawyer sat us all down, and the look on my father's face when he realized Grandpa had left the entire house and the surrounding 50 acres of prime real estate to me was something I'll never forget. He got a small cash stipend, and my brothers got nothing but a few tools from the shed. The house was mine, lock, stock, and barrel, but Grandpa had told me something in private a month before he died. He told me that he knew the vultures would circle, and he told me to look under the loose floorboard in the pantry if they ever tried to take what was mine. For the first year, things were tense but manageable. I lived in the house, kept up with the taxes, and ignored the constant suggestions from my parents that I should sell and divide the money equally. Then came the offer from Crestview Developments. They wanted the land for a massive hotel project and offered $6 million. I said no immediately because Grandpa wanted that land preserved. My family, however, saw $6 million and lost their minds. They started calling me daily, calling me a hoarder, and accusing me of financial abuse because I wouldn't share the wealth. My dad even tried to sue me to contest the will, claiming Grandpa wasn't in his right mind. But the lawyer had a video of the signing that proved otherwise. I thought that was the end of it. Then I had to leave for my 3-month certification in another state. It was a career-making opportunity, and since the house was legally mine, I figured it was safe. I left my parents a key, thinking they'd just check on the pipes. That was my first mistake. 2 months into my trip, I got a notification from a neighbor asking when the demolition was scheduled to start. My heart stopped. I called my dad, and he casually told me that they had found a clerical error in the deed transfer and had signed a deal with Crestview. He told me they had already moved my stuff into a storage unit, and that this was for the best. They had used a fraudulent power of attorney they'd tricked a notary into signing while I was away, claiming I was mentally incapacitated and unable to manage my affairs. They sold my home, my sanctuary, for a quick payout. I was shaking with a rage I can't even describe. I drove 18 hours straight to get back, only to find a fence around my property and a private property sign from the developer. My family wouldn't answer my calls. They had already received a massive down payment and had moved into expensive rentals, acting like they'd won the lottery. I felt like I had lost everything, but then I remembered Grandpa's voice. I remembered the pantry. I didn't care about the fence. I knew the woods behind that house like the back of my hand. I snuck onto the property at 2:00 a.m., avoiding the security guard, and crawled through the basement window I knew didn't lock right. The house was mostly empty, stripped of its soul. I went to the pantry, ripped up the floorboard, and found a heavy, fireproof lockbox. Inside wasn't money. It wasn't a secret deed. It was a thick folder labeled the Environmental Contingency and a handwritten letter that said, "If you're reading this, they've betrayed you. Use this to bury them." So, that's the situation I was in. My own family had committed fraud to sell my home, and I was standing in a dark pantry with a box that held the power to destroy the entire deal. I had two choices. I could try to fight a long, expensive legal battle to get the house back, or I could use what was in this box to make sure nobody, not the developers, and certainly not my family, ever saw a single cent from that land. Before I tell you what was in that folder and how I used it to absolutely ruin their lives, I want you to pause and comment below. If your parents sold your house behind your back, would you try to get the house back, or would you focus purely on scorch, turf revenge? Let me know, because what I did next changed everything. Inside that folder was a comprehensive, professional environmental survey that Grandpa had commissioned years ago but never filed with the state. He had discovered that the back 40 acres of the property sat directly on a unique geological formation that housed a protected, endangered species of blind cave salamander and a rare subterranean water source that fed the town's reservoir. More importantly, he had documents proving the land was a historical burial site for a local indigenous tribe from the 1800s, something the town had forgotten over time. Grandpa had kept this secret specifically as a kill switch. If the land remained a private residence, it didn't matter. But the moment a commercial developer tried to break ground, federal and state laws would kick in, halting all construction indefinitely and devaluing the land to nearly zero. I didn't go to the police about the fraud yet. I went to the State Environmental Protection Agency and the Historical Preservation Office. I submitted every single document anonymously at first, then followed up with my legal ID as the rightful owner. The fallout was nuclear. Within 48 hours, a cease and desist order was slapped on the front gate. The developers, who had already sunk millions into permits and the initial pay out to my family, were suddenly facing federal investigations. When they realized my family had sold them the land under a fraudulent power of attorney, they didn't just back out, they sued my parents and brothers for every penny plus damages. The clerical error my dad bragged about was actually a felony. Since the land was now declared a protected site, the value plummeted. The developers demanded their $6 million back, but my family had already spent hundreds of thousands on cars, vacations, and debt. They were broke, and now they were being hit with a massive lawsuit and criminal charges for forgery. My dad called me screaming, crying, telling me that I was destroying the family name, and that they would go to jail if I didn't withdraw my claims. I told him that the family name died when they tried to make me homeless. I stayed in a small apartment and watched from a distance as the bank foreclosed on everything they owned. Mark and Leo had to move back into a tiny studio together, and my parents ended up in a trailer park, facing a mountain of legal fees they'll never pay off. The house itself is still standing, but it's now a protected historical landmark. I can't live in it anymore because of the new zoning, but I don't care. The land is safe, the salamanders are thriving, and the spirits of those buried there are finally undisturbed. My family hates me. They tell everyone I'm a monster who chose bugs and dirt over my own parents. But when I look at the photo of Grandpa on my mantel, I know he's smiling. He knew they couldn't be trusted, and he gave me the weapon to ensure they could never profit from their greed. I lost my house, but I kept my soul and his legacy. This experience taught me that blood doesn't make you family, loyalty and respect do. If someone is willing to sacrifice your well-being for a paycheck, they aren't your kin. They're just predators you happen to share DNA with. I've cut them all off completely, and for the first time in years, I can breathe easily knowing they can never hurt me again. I hope this story serves as a reminder to always have a backup plan and to never underestimate how far greedy people will go. If you think I was right to protect the land and punish my family, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and revenge, and let me know your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too far, or did they get exactly what was coming to them? I'll be reading your responses. I'll see you all in the next story.